Welcome back, Senior Devs. Sean Cannon here. In this lesson, we're going to talk about when to leverage third-party services and when to roll your own solution. 15 years ago, SaaS wasn't really a thing. There were a few obvious ones like payment gateways and merchant accounts and whatnot, but software as a service really didn't have a place because APIs were so terrible. We needed to use SOAP and XML, and the languages and frameworks that were really driving most of the server-side development had modules and plugins to handle a lot of this stuff, like sending emails. In PHP or Java, we would just set up a monolith server, which would run the web server, the email server, the database, and whatever else we needed. Sometimes our servers would be running 30 websites to distribute hosting costs. When APIs got more popular, mostly thanks to JSON, we started seeing more SaaS providers pop up. External image or video hosting, email, and eventually companies started offloading huge portions of their business to other companies like Okta or Auth0, who handle user authentication, or like Twilio, who handle MFA or SMS. So when should you build it and when should you buy it? At a very high level, I typically recommend that my clients build it if it's a part of the core business offering and buy it if it's not. If you're a video game company, code your games and offload user registration, payments, marketing, HR, legal, and so on. For example, my company Alien Creations has an extremely simple website. I build websites all day, so I'm fully confident I could build out a payroll system to pay myself every 2 weeks, but why? It's so much easier just to make an account on Gusto and let them deal with it. I don't even need to integrate it into my website. It's just a huge responsibility I don't have to deal with anymore, and I can rest assured that they will get it right, because payroll is only one tiny slice of my business, whereas payroll is their business. Another example, I built a website several years ago called Playlist.com. We literally only focused on writing code to handle the UI and track user preferences and save playlists. All the music recommendations and taste profiles came from the Econest API, and all the MP3 files were streamed from a MediaNet CDN. We didn't have to do any work with pulling in MP3 files and saving them in S3 or something, and we didn't have to try and reinvent song recommendations based on likes or listens, because that was the core business offering from Econest, who was later acquired by Spotify. Using these third-party services saved us likely a few months of work and several $1,000s in hosting and development costs, and realistically, any solution we'd have created would likely been subpar to Econest and MediaNet because that's all they offer. Their entire business effort is making that one thing amazing. Deciding whether to build it or to buy it is ultimately up to the client, since they would not only have to pay for this service, but also have to pay you to implement it or code it from scratch. That said, this is how I typically weigh my options when communicating my recommendations to the client. Use third party when it's cheap, easy, and you've done it before, when it's something you can build later if you really want to, but you want to get your product out the door fast, when it's something completely out of your league, when there are other complementary services already in play, like if you're using HashiCorp for one of two things, use the rest of their stack when possible. If you're using AWS for hosting, use S3 for static assets, CloudWatch for logs, Elasticache, RDS, Cloud Search, and so on, so everything integrates nicely. And lastly, when it's not the core competency of the project owners, they will have to maintain whatever you deliver to them. The less they have to maintain, the better. Roll your own when the client wants something very custom and you don't want to try and customize or override a third-party offering. If you've already built a strategy for something on a previous project and can plug it in to save the client money, or when it's the client's core business offering. So this may all seem pretty obvious for large features like email, search, SMS, and so on, but what about third-party libraries? Should you make your own carousel or use a third-party carousel script? What about a file uploader or a form validation? For this layer of integration, I typically recommend using a framework or component library whenever possible to get you 80% for free, and then polyfill anything that's missing when you cross that bridge. Ideally, pick a stable library that's widely used. Don't choose something that's brand new, because if the creators decide to abandon the project, then you'll be stuck with someone else's unmaintained side project as the underlying infrastructure for your code base. As I will likely repeat several more times in this course, the tools themselves are not important. Just weigh the risks and rewards for the most ideal candidates and decide which ones your team wants to adopt, and move on to use the tools to build your project. That wraps up this module. Keep growing, and I'll see you in the next one.